My guest today is Glenn Henriksen. Glenn, how are you today?
I'm excellent. Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, it's great to have you on here. It's great to see you. I got to see you in London in person recently, and which is really exciting to see good people in person. and and I'm excited to have you on my show. Tell me, what do you do
Yeah.
for a living?
So for a living, I trade code for food, which is the greatest job in the world. I try to code. Sometimes it's just text, and sometimes it's boxes and arrows, which is not as fun. But yeah,
Yeah, that's what I do.
and more real terms, I run the technical side on a startup, law tech startup, trying to become a scale up, which is interesting, fun, and sometimes excruciating painful. But that's the startup life. I used to be a
Excellent.
consultant for about 20 years, but I decided to work in on the other side of the table and do in-house product development instead, which is fantastic.
Oh, very cool. And I also know you as a conference speaker. I saw you in London. I saw your talk there, and I've seen you. You're a very good speaker. I've seen you at a bunch of those, so I know
Thank you.
that's like your not your day job, but your fun hobby.
It's my hobby. It's I like conference speaking because it lets me go to a lot of conferences, get inspiration, find out new stuff, and meet great people that I can learn
Great.
from. And every now and again, we make some good friends along the way.
Yeah. And
Isn't that the thing that the real reward isn't the end of the road, but the friends we made along the way, or something like that?
I like the way you phrase that, and I also like the way you just talk about learning new things because, a conversation with you sparked some thoughts of mine. You were talking about how some of us we just do things because we've always done that, or because everyone has done it. We don't stop and think about why we do things, and I've certainly been guilty of that many times in my career and in my life. Tell me about that.
Yep, we had this conversation been popping up a while ago. In last summer, I think it was, I did a talk at the Copenhagen Dev Fest, which is a festival more than a conference. And I talked about ditch your backlog and shape up your product development. It was a two-part talk. One is why your backlog is bad, and one is how to get started, or what is shape up as a product development methodology, which we've done in our startup. And the backlog thing, like ditch your backlog, was kind of surprising because there's a lot of people that sort of almost took offense to that. It's like, how can we work without a backlog? And then I started explaining why it was bad, and I started giving an alternative, and they were like, "Oh man, we want to do that." And I've consulted and had workshops with companies afterwards saying, "Hey, we want to get on this thing. Can you come down and talk to our managers, talk to our developers? Can you give the same talk internally at our company, because this really resonates with what we want to do." And I think it's weird because it's not rocket science. It's not like I discovered something brand new, but people like, we never thought about that.
Well, let's
And
dive into this
back
a bit. Why are backlogs bad?
So backlogs are bad because they don't help you focus on the right things. There's lots of traps in a backlog, and it gives you extra work because you have to maintain, and people call it backlog grooming, which the word rubs me. I like it called gardening or pruning,
Okay,
at
all right.
least. So, but you have to tend to the backlog, and that's work going into the backlog, which could have gone into creating value for the customer instead.
I
There's
see.
no direct customer value in a backlog.
Right.
And some people are going to disagree with me with that, but they're entitled to their own opinions. Um, but a backlog is a place where you put ideas. And these ideas coming into backlog are often raw, they're unworked. We're taught to make user stories, the as a, I want, so that kind of thing. And we put that on the backlog, and we call it a placeholder for communication. And we'll have a conversation later about what this actually means. Except that later is maybe much later, where the context of when the item was created isn't fresh in everybody's mind.
Yeah, or it's
And
changed.
maybe the premise of the thing has disappeared. Maybe it's
Yeah.
gone. Maybe it's different. And so we have to spend work maintaining these things that are outdated. And then we have to do work with, okay, we're going to move this to the top, this one goes. And we have to do work where we have to figure out, is this more important than this? Is this more important than this? And we have stuff on the backlog, which this is a huge feature. This is, let's change this button to blue instead of light green.
Right.
And they're all in the same. And we try to organize it with epics. And there's lots of work going into organize this. And then you have traps. You have stuff like the recency bias, where things that are closer to you in time seem more important to you. So new things on the backlog get more attention than old things on the backlog by virtue of being new. You have stuff like the IKEA effect. You know about the IKEA effect? The
IKEA,
IKEA effect,
the furniture store.
yeah, furniture store. The IKEA effect, and people have done research on this, where if you've made work, if you put your own work into something, you value it disproportionately more.
Hmm.
So if you buy a table from IKEA and you build it yourself or assemble it yourself, you put more value into that table than you would if you bought a similar table of similar quality. Yeah, I built that. I made this thing. And if you put work into a backlog item, you value it more than a backlog item someone else made. And there's the sunk cost fallacy, where you've put work into something. I've been working so much with this backlog item. We've been specing it and making so we have to build it now because otherwise the work is wasted. Well, there's nothing more wasteful than building the wrong thing,
Right.
which doesn't just cost you the work of building the wrong thing, it also the opportunity cost of not building the right thing, right?
Yeah. Right. So this is so all those things are valid, but and yet we still continue to
But we
create
still have,
backlogs. And I think it's because it's part of a bigger issue that you were getting at earlier, is that we do things maybe for the wrong reason.
yeah. So I teach a class at the local university every fall, software engineering, because they're very into computer science and they wanted someone to teach some software engineering concept as well. So they asked me to do that. I've been doing that for 12 years or something like that. And it's great fun because you meet these new students. They are completely fresh, and I get a lot of inspiration from them, and they have fresh ideas, and I love it. I love the work. But one of the things I try to teach them is that so programming is a practice-based profession. You have to practice. You cannot read a book and then be good at programming from reading the book.
Right.
You have to practice. And when you practice, you have to do what's called deliberate practice, where you decide, what am I practicing for? What is the purpose of this practice? What am I trying to teach myself? And then focus your practice on that thing. And I think a lot of people in a lot of stuff they do need to focus more about they need to be more deliberate in their choices. So we're doing this thing here. Why are we doing it? Why are we doing this thing? And when you see, I started looking at this a little while ago, and you see it all over the place. You have we use the repository pattern. Why? Well, because we don't actually. I don't like the repository pattern, but people do. I'm not a fan. It's popular, and people we use the repository pattern. Why do you use the repository pattern? Well, because this book said the repository pattern is good. And it comes down to this appeal to authority argument because I read it.
Right.
Which is fine if you're starting out.
Yep.
But it's not so fine when you have 5 to 10 years experience.
Sure.
And I keep getting reminded every now and again. Scott Hanselman said once, that stuck with me. There's a difference between having 10 years of experience and having 1 year of experience 10 times.
Right.
And you have to sort of evolve as you go along and learn new things. But I think we need to stop every now and again and look back and what the stuff we're doing? Why are we doing this? What value is this process or this thing bringing us? So I'm a fan of the vertical slice architecture. We use a lot of mediator, and we have
I know Jimmy
um,
Bogart is a
yeah,
proponent of this.
yeah. I love Jimmy, and there's different patterns here. There's also I think it's Jeremy Miller who has Wolverine,
Okay.
the
Yes.
Critter stack, which has a lot of it's a lot of the same concepts, and in some ways you could argue it's better, and in some way it's different, and maybe in some ways it's worse. But and we looked at that. We looked at Steve Ardalis. It has the endpoints, which
Okay.
also is a thing of in the same space.
Yeah. Steve Smith is his full name.
Steve Smith, yeah, yeah. He has Ardalis is like a stage name or something.
I don't know what the origin of our Dallas is. But
No,
That's his Twitter handle.
yeah, that's how I know him. So, except we met a couple of conferences, but mostly, yeah, Steve Smith has the endpoints thing, which is sort of in the same space and do different things, but it's very easy just to pick one and say, oh, we're going with mediator because that's what everyone else does.
Yeah.
But and I'll admit, we started with that. Like, oh, mediator is great. Someone else recommended. Let's try mediator. But even though we're doing that, we stop with like, oh, here's this other thing. Let's look at that. And then be deliberate. Like, okay, we're still going to keep doing mediator. And here are the reasons why we're doing it. At the time, and there's been tons of reasons. There's not a pro this or pro that thing. They're all fine, but pick one because something
Yeah.
that is relevant to you. It's like, oh, we're doing Scrum. Why are you doing Scrum? Why is Scrum helping you? How is it? Can you change parts of it to make it fit you better? And that's a thing that I feel, and maybe it's because so much stuff is happening. Like there's new frameworks coming out, there's new versions coming out every now and again. And there was this recently there was this hubbub about Microsoft building the new TypeScript compiler in Go.
Hmm.
You did you catch that?
I did not. Tell me about that.
So Microsoft created the language TypeScript, and the TypeScript compiler, which transpiles TypeScript code to JavaScript code, was written in TypeScript.
Yeah.
Which is fine, but it's not very fast.
Mm.
And so they wanted a much faster compiler. So they came out with the news. We're going to rewrite. We've now started rewriting the TypeScript compiler. It's up to 10 times faster.
By writing it.
And they wrote it in Go. And people lost their minds because now Microsoft has abandoned .NET because they should have written it in, they should have written the compiler in C#.
Oh, I see.
Not Go.
Well, this is sort of a hands across the water thing. That's just like Angular uses TypeScript as its transpiler, and Angular is maintained in large part by Google.
Yeah, it's fun.
And
so
why out there?
Why are they making it in Go? Microsoft has no confidence in .NET.
I see.
And then Anders Hillsberg came on, went online.
The inventor of C#.
The inventor of C#, and also the inventor of TypeScript, and the mastermind of TypeScript as it is. He runs that project. That we evaluated lots of things. We tried lots of different languages, and here are the specific reasons why we chose Go. There were things like it was slightly better for native code. It had the style of Go was very comparable to the style of TypeScript. Okay. So it was almost, in many cases, it was like a one-to-one port, whereas writing it in C# would have required moving to a whole new paradigm of software development to use the strengths of C#. And I found that funny because they really did that job. They had a deliberate choice.
Yeah.
Like they went through, here's a bunch of different ways we could do it. Here are pros and cons. Here are the things we want to achieve. These work out. These work out. This one doesn't work out. This one is actually better than all the others. We're going to pick that one. irrespective of saying that, well, we're Microsoft, we should pick C sharp,
Yeah.
which would have not been a deliberate choice. That would have been a choice
Just kind of the default
because,
fallback choice.
yeah, the default. Now we're going to pick C sharp. We're Microsoft. We always pick C sharp.
Yeah.
So,
Also, they're the developers are probably more familiar with C sharp, so the learning curve would be less. I mean, that
well,
seems
all
like
the
a pretty good argument.
developers working on this now were TypeScript developers.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah. So they're all
So,
JavaScript
yeah.
guys, not .NET guys. So they had to learn
Now,
something new, regardless.
and, well, they're compiler developers, so they work. They're probably
Oh,
good at
that also
programming
means they're a
anyway.
lot smarter than I am.
Yeah, they're on a different level than me, at least.
Uh,
So,
yeah.
and
So this everything you said sounds really reasonable, and yet most of us are not doing that. We're using the tools that just are. We're making decisions based on either what everyone else is doing, or maybe that people on our project are doing. We're not taking that step back that you're talking about and saying, why am I making this decision?
I
Why do you
think
think that is? Why are we not doing this?
I think we have a lot of stuff going on. There's lots of stuff happening. There's lots, and the world is happening, and it's very easy and comfortable, and just like, oh, this thing here, let's take that. This thing comes in a box. It has a name on it, a label. We'll take that. We'll unwrap it, and we'll just put it here, and we're done. There's a bunch of decisions now we don't have to make because somebody
that's fair.
made those for us.
Decisions they take time and they take extra brain cycles, and I don't have an unlimited number of either of those things, and so one less decision actually is a plus for me.
But it's a little bit like the old cartoon where the guy with the square wheel is moving along, and people's like, "Hey, have you tried? I don't have time for that. I don't have time to worry about that. I'm busy. I need to work." Yeah. And he's moving his wheelbarrow with the square wheel, and these other guys are standing with a round wheel in the back. Like, should you maybe? Because if you stop and change it for a round wheel, you'll go faster overall. Right?
So maybe that's the upfront cost is also
so there's an upfront. So if you're applying, if you want to be agile, you can buy the Scrum box and unwrap that and implement all the little features. And now you're doing Scrum, and now you're agile. I'd argue that you are not, but you're on the way there. It's a gateway drug. But to get to where you want to be, you have to look back and what are we doing? And look at the stuff you have. It's like, are we doing the correct things? Are we doing the right things? Are we building the right things in the right ways? So I think it requires effort, and it requires a surplus of energy to look at what we're doing in all the different variants, both in process-wise, in our design, our technology. And I think that's a lot of work.
Sure.
Or at least it seems like a lot of work. I don't think it's that hard to make. Baby steps are also steps, right? So even if you make small changes, they accumulate and make bigger changes over time. So I think it's this part where it seems overwhelming. It's easier to just do this way. This guy said that. I don't have time to look into everything. What we've been doing, we've been looking at endpoints, mediator, the critter stack. When we started, only mediator existed. Not everyone has time to stop and look at the different alternatives and do a proper evaluation.
And vertical stack development, there aren't that many alternatives. Imagine if you wanted to decide what's the best JavaScript framework for my project. I mean, how many JavaScript frameworks are there? There are probably hundreds, maybe thousands.
And I also think just stopping and saying, we're going to keep using this thing because we don't have time to look for something else. That is also fine. That is deliberate.
Just asking the question, I think, is
just asking the question. Just saying hey, okay, maybe there's a better way of doing this. We should look at that.
Put that on the backlog.
Put it on the backlog. Or as in the shape-up world, it sounds like a pitch. But just being okay, we're going to keep doing this because these reasons. And one of those reasons might be because, well, changing this now that's going to hurt us. We don't have time to do that. We don't have, but be deliberate about it, be vocal about it, and then you can make an informed decision about it. So lots of people are going in the what I call the COBOL trap, where people back in the day they made their bank systems in COBOL,
Right.
and now they can't find developers to work on COBOL because it aged poorly. And for a while, it was a problem because COBOL developers were retiring, and now it's a problem because they're getting so old that they are unable to work at all.
Right.
So they're disappearing out of the top, and there's a problem feeding in at the bottom, and there's massive amounts of COBOL code that is really hard to get something done with. And people are doing that with newer frameworks, like you mentioned Angular earlier, which has the Angular 1.0, which turned into Angular JS, and then you have Angular 2.0, which turned into the just Angular. And some people are still working with Angular JS. People are still on .NET Framework. It wasn't long ago where I talked to someone where the core of their system is built in Delphi from Goerland, which was an amazing product in 1999.
It was object-oriented.
Yeah, it was great. Object Pascal was the greatest things that started slicing bread. But if you don't have a strategy or don't have a plan to get off that, you're just postponing a problem that you never know when you're going to fix, and when it hits you really bad.
Right.
And I think it's fine to stay with Delphi. It's like, okay, we're going to have the core in here, and we're going to do it for these reasons. Because then you can start thinking about those reasons and start working at those, because the problem is huge. But if you break it down into reasons, the reasons might be small. It's like, okay, this reason's here. We can remove this reason. And then you can work on that. And now we have 2 more reasons left. And then, okay, this reason here, we can work towards getting rid of that. And then you can start laying a plan for going somewhere. It's sort of like going. So in Norway, there's a concept of, going on a hike. So you can go on a hike out in nature, up in the mountains, in the forest, whatever. And lots of people have this concept of going on a hike without a destination. You're not going somewhere. You're just going.
You're just going to have to enjoy the fjords.
Yeah. The trip is the reward, right?
Yes.
And with product development, if you're only focused on the trip, you're not really going to get anywhere. And that doesn't really work. I mean, the trip should be enjoyable, and you should make whatever effort you can to make the trip as nice as possible. But you're going to have a destination that you want to get to. You have a direction you want to get to. And without being deliberate in your choices, and your choices might suck. You might have like 2 really bad choices. But if you're deliberate, like, okay, we're going to pick this one because of these reasons. And if you're doing that, we're thinking that will get us further that way, right? So it's sort of like, how can we structure our choices in a way that makes us more aware of the pros and cons, and then enables us to go in the direction we want to go. Like, how can we move the needles the right ways? How can we make the developer experience more pleasurable? How can we make the business happier? How can we make our paychecks bigger? How can we make our free time more? All of these things. And it's not just which framework you're picking, it's in life in general. Like, why am I doing these things? Why am I doing this work? Why am I taking this job? Why do I say yes to this promotion? Why do I not change my job? So why do I stay in this job? Is it because I'm used to being here? Why do I keep these friends? Right? Why do I go travel to conferences? Like, if you're deliberate in your choices, I believe you'll be happier with your choices and happier with your life in general. And it's all sounds, when I say it out loud, it sounds very like mushy mushy.
But
Um,
it sounds intuitive, and yet many of us are not doing that either in our lives or in our software development process. I think if I
I'm,
can boil it down to it, what you're recommending is when you come to a decision, what tool to use, what framework to use, what are you going to build in your next sprint, what methodologies. Just take us one step back and say, why am I making this decision? And
yeah, and I think it's
if there's a good reason why, fine. If there's reasons why not to, then start to think about whether or not that is the right decision.
I
Just
think it's even one level further down is like recognize that you're actually making a decision now.
fair point, yeah, or a significant decision.
Yeah, because recognize that like not doing nothing is also a choice. That's also
Sure,
a
yeah,
decision.
you may decide that okay, I have a good reason for doing this, or have a
Yeah,
there's barriers to doing the alternative.
and sometimes just
Maybe there's a major learning curve in switching over
yeah,
to Go when I really already know this other language.
and let maybe step back every now and again and look at what you're doing, and it's like, are we doing the right things?
Yeah,
What decisions are we not taking, or what decisions have we implicitly taking? And that's sort of that's more of like getting rid of the implicit decisions. Like,
right.
yeah, we're doing this thing and it's fine, and we're aware that we're doing this thing and we want to do this thing, and that's okay. Or say, actually, we're doing this thing and we didn't really fit, we just ended up doing it. We just sort of grew into it, and then make a conscious decision of either we're going to keep doing it or we're going to do something else. And if we're going to do something else, how can we get from A to B?
All right. That
I think
deliberate plan, I
that's
think, is key. We're
a
just
sort
about
of
at time. Are there
yeah.
any resources you can point people to learn more about what you're thinking about?
I I really don't.
This all
I'm
came
not good
from
at
your
that.
conversations in your head rather than
No,
from.
so I learn by osmosis.
Okay.
Um, I've never, my brain is not good at reading books or like distilling like be. I'm not. So I one of the reasons I think of this is because I'm not good at it myself. I try to be more deliberate in my choices in my life.
That's fair.
Um, I get a lot of information from my online friends. I like we spoke at conferences, lots of technology conferences, and I get a lot of inspiration of these people, and get a lot of inspiration of talking to friends, other developers, colleagues, and I hear, and I of course have my own pain. So for me, learning about this is being more aware of the choices that are out there. I do that through online communities. I hang out on Blue Sky. I go to conferences, the hallway tracks. I listen to podcasts, um, and just what is going on out there. What are people doing, and gathering inspiration from those. That's my being. Yeah, just trying to, because there's so much stuff, and nobody getting. I think it's hard to. For me, that's a deliberate choice, actually. So I'm not going to religiously read a bunch of blogs or religiously read a bunch of books. I'm just going to let the river flow past me, and I'll see what comes by. It's, oh, that looks interesting. And this Labrador or Golden Retriever mind comes, oh, squirrel. Let's look at that. So that's my
Yeah.
approach to it.
Well, this is great. This has given me a lot of food for thought, and I really appreciate you taking the time, Glenn. And I hope
That's
life
been
is
great.
good in Norway for you.
I hope so too. How are you doing? Where are you based?
I'm in downtown Chicago.
Downtown Chicago. I
Yeah.
never close up in the Chicago airport.
Oh, you must come. Come in the summer. It's really beautiful here in the summer.
I'll try that. Maybe I'll stop by. I'll stop by if I'm going to Kansas this year. I don't know.
Awesome. Oh, I hope I get to KCDC. I applied. I haven't heard back yet.
Nor have I. Wonderful conference, wonderful
Yes,
people.
agreed. Thanks again.
Thank you. I like to keep up with technology, innovations, and news from my friends that I meet online and at conferences.